Hi there, and welcome to Computer Science 30S. This is Lesson 1, Building Blocks. And today this is your first lesson. We're going to be looking at a different programming environment called called Snap or BYOB. And once you get it fired up, you should look very similar to you if you've done Scratch programming. You'll see this difference right here, but for the most part, the interface is pretty much the same as Scratch. So let's get started. After this lesson, you will know what a block is and what an argument is. You should be able to, or you should understand why user-defined blocks are useful, and you should be able to, by the end of this lesson, create your own user-defined block. Let's begin. Common structure to use in computer programming is the idea of a subroutine. In BYOB or Snap, this is referred to as a block. It's basically a bit of script that gets a name. When that bit of script needs to be used more than once, the script simply calls the name or sends the program to that particular block, and then it executes. This allows the programmer to use pieces of code over and over again. Higher level languages like Java and lots of other ones might refer to these as methods, but the concept is the same, and it's a very crucial concept in computer science. They can also be used to build libraries of code that can be used over and over, and by many people. You can share them with your friends. It's a way that a group of people can program together by building these blocks and then putting all the pieces together at the end. Imagine people building a car, all the different parts that are built, and then the parts are put together to create a complex machine like the car. Okay, if you're wondering, in Scratch, the cat's name was Scratch, and Snap, this fellow's name is Alonzo, so we can refer to him as Alonzo, I guess, the rest of the way. So what I want you to do is I want you to click on Make a Block at the bottom of the Variables tab, or right-click on the scripting area and choose Make a Block. And this will open up the Make a Block dialog box. Now you get to choose which tab the block should go into. Our block is going to draw a square, so let's choose Motion. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. Right-click, I'm going to go Make a Block, and I'm going to go Motion. And we're at the area that we need to be to continue. When we selected Motion, the block became blue. We now have the option of making blocks of different types. Right now, we're just going to make a regular command block. So we're going to call it Draw Square. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go Draw Square. And we're going to create a motion one. When we click OK, we should see that the block editor open up below. And for now, don't worry about this atomic checkbox right here. So you should see when you do go ahead and do that, you should see a block editor pop up and draw a square up here at the top. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So, and now we're going to actually edit our block, create our block. Use the blocks from the regular menus to create a script that draws a square as shown below. So in other words, go ahead and recreate this little script right here. So I'm just going to jump over here and do that. We're going to need a repeat loop. We're going to repeat 4 times, and we're going to move 100 steps. And we're going to turn 90 degrees to the right. And that has to be inside the loop. Okay, so when you click OK, as I've just done, you should be able to use this block as if it were a regular block. You've created your first user-defined block. Since you created the block as a motion block, it will end up at the bottom of the motion tab. So now let's create this little bit of code here to draw a square in our main scripting area. So if you go over here to motion, you should see draw square has now been created. And when we click on the green flag, we need to put our pen down and we're going to draw a square. Let's see if that works. Yay, Alonzo drew a square. Okay, now there's lots of improvements to be made here. So we're going to improve the draw square block. You've created a block that draws a square, but it only draws a square where each side is of length 100 steps. That's defined. It would be great if we could specify how long we wanted each side to be. We will edit the block to accept an argument or an input, which tells it the length of the square that it has to draw. We're going to go back and we're going to edit the block, right-click on the new block, and select Edit to go back to the block editor. So let's go back to my programming area, and I'm going to edit this. In the block editor, notice that when you move the mouse over the top row of the block, some plus signs show up in this area right here. When you click on these plus signs, you can add more text or arguments. When you click on the text between the plus signs, you can delete or modify the text. Click on the plus sign at the far right as shown below. So right there. Let's go ahead and do that. When you click on the plus on the far right, you should get the following dialog box. With this dialog box, we can select if we want to add input, which is in orange, or more text, which is in blue. We want to add the input size, so we're going to type the word size, and we're going to select input name and click OK. So I'm going to put size here, and it's going to be an input name. And let's click OK. After clicking OK, we now have a variable inside our block definition. We want to drag the variable size down into the move block. Whenever we need a new copy of a variable, we just grab the copy from the variable in the top row where they are said to be defined. And so you'll notice down here in the next picture, I've taken the word size and I've dragged it down into that spot right there. Let me just show you how that works. Like so. When we click OK, we'll see that our draw square block now takes an argument. When we can put different numbers in the blank and draw squares of different sizes. So go ahead and try that out with various sizes. I'm just going to complete that over here. I put 100 in here. He redrew the square. I want to make a bigger square, like so. So now our block is a little bit more functional. So you can go ahead and play with that for a minute. Now you're going to make a block that takes two inputs. We want to create a block, draw shape block that takes an input for the size of the length of the sides, as well as the number of sides, so that we can draw different things rather than just squares. We'll call these input arguments size and sides. By the way, you can create the inputs to this block in exactly the same way as we did in the previous section by clicking on the plus signs to add input. However, as a shortcut, you can also type the names of the input as shown below if you know sort of ahead of time what you're going to type in for inputs. The percent signs indicate that the word should be an input. You should feel comfortable with both entry methods. So down here, when I created my block, when I went draw shape, I could have put size with a percent and sides with a percent, and that will tell me to create input blocks or input arguments given those names. Now, unfortunately, the size of the text field where you can type in the name of the block and any percent input shortcuts is pretty limited. If you find yourself running out of room, it's recommended that you just name the block and use the plus signs later to add inputs. Probably the best way to do that, but another way you can do it. So I'd like you to go ahead and try to create a new block called draw shape that accepts two inputs, the size and the number of sides. And I'd like you to pause the video now while you try that, and then I'll show you the answer on the next page. All right, so hopefully you had a try with that. If you haven't, pause the video right here and then give that a try, and I'm about to show you the answer. All right, so your new block should be called draw shape. It should contain two arguments, one called size, one called sides. We're going to repeat sides times. We're going to move size steps, and in here we're going to have 360 divided by sides degrees. You'll notice that the block draw shapes has two input boxes to indicate where there are two numbers to be entered. So in your main code, it should look like this. And I'm going to go ahead and create that over here. So instead of draw square, I'm going to go back to my motion tab. I'm going to make a block. I'm going to call it draw shape. It's going to be a motion block command. And in here, I'm going to have size and another one called sides. All right, and I'm going to repeat my sides times, like so. And then inside here, I'm going to have move size steps, like so. And then I'm going to turn in here, and I'm going to need a green operator block here with a divide by. You might remember this from math class, that the angle is 360 divided by the number of sides. So I'm going to reuse sides. Okay, and now in my motion tab over here, I've got draw shape. And let's try that with 100 and 3 sides. And I should get a triangle. Yay, I drew a triangle. Okay, so you should have given that a try. There's 2 issues with this. It'd be nice if there was some text in the box to indicate what variable it is it's asking for. And we want to make sure that the block only accepts numeric inputs, not words. To take care of this, open up the Draw Shape block for editing and click on the size variable. This dialog box will open up like so. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to click on the size variable right here. And when we click this little arrow here, we get many more options. We'd like to change the input type to number, and I'd like to add a default value or size value to number, any number of your choice, something like 100. So go ahead and click this radio button here and put in 100 right there. I'll complete that as well. Number 100, and click OK. The other option would be to make the type any type and put the word size in there. The disadvantage to this is that the block will accept text as input and then not run correctly. So sort of a balancing act there. You got to decide which you prefer when you're creating this. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as size equals 100. Now, when I drew my draw shape, let's get rid of those and let's redo. Draw shape automatically sets the default to 100. So at least that way you know that it's a number that's supposed to be in there. Okay, so I'd like you to do that same thing for the sides, just like so. Let's make it a number, and let's just give it a default of 4 so it draws a square. And there we go. Let's just test that out. Works good, and I can change the number of sides maybe to 6 if I like. Make a hexagon. There we go, perfect. Okay, so play around with that, make sure you can do that. All right, so you might remember this particular code right here, or this little assignment. I'd like you to try to create this now with your new block. Be sure to use nested repeats. Here's the pseudocode just to give you a little bit of help here. I realize this is sort of your first assignment. It might take you a while to sort of get back into the swing of things. So the way I'd like you to do this is I'd like you to draw a triangle like this one. And then and use a block for that. And then I'd like you to change the X by the triangle side length so that it skips to there. Then use draw triangle again, the block that you've created. And then I'd like you to change the X and Y to the upper peak of triangle 1. In other words, skip it to there. And then use draw triangle like so. Then I'd like you to change the X and Y to create the bottom grouping. So in other words, skip way down to here. And then repeat all of that again. Repeat all of this again one more time so that it draws that triangle, changes the X to there, draws that triangle, changes the X and Y to there, and draws that triangle there. That's going to take a little while to do. Good luck with that, and I'll give you the answer in a little while. Once you've completed that, then you should also give this a whirl as well. Okay, so you have 2 practice assignments to show me when you're done. You should save that. Save the second one as lesson 1 multi-shapes, but I'd like to see the triangle one first, and once you've got that, then show me how you've completed this one here. This is a formative assessment. This is just strictly for feedback, but you really should complete both of these assignments to get a greater understanding of how the blocks work. Good luck.